You have a guitar sitting in the corner of your room. You bought it 14 months ago. You played it for 3 weeks. You told yourself you'd come back to it. You haven't. There's a course sitting in your account, 47 lessons. You completed 9. There's a notebook you bought with the specific intention of writing every day. You wrote for 11 days. There's a gym membership that you've been paying for since January that you stopped using in March. Not because something happened, not because life got in the way. You just stopped showing up. And the strangest part isn't that you stopped. The strangest part is that you can't point to the exact moment it ended. There was no decision, no dramatic goodbye. You simply disappeared on yourself, quietly, without fanfare, and the project is still sitting there, waiting, as if you might come back. You probably won't. This is not a video about motivation. It's not a video about discipline in the way people usually talk about discipline. Willpower, habits, morning routines. This is a video about architecture, about the invisible structure that separates the people who finish things from the people who only begin them, and about what Sparta understood about human nature that almost nobody talks about. Here is something worth sitting with. You are not lazy. You are not weak. You are not broken. The evidence is right there in the pattern. You don't struggle to start. You start constantly. You start with genuine enthusiasm, real excitement, actual desire. The problem arrives later, somewhere between the beginning and the middle, when the novelty evaporates and what's left is just the work, just the showing up, just the repetition. And at that precise moment, something in you goes looking for a new beginning, another course, another idea, another project that feels exciting and full of possibility before it gets hard. Studies on human attention and motivation show that the brain releases dopamine not primarily in response to reward, but in response to novelty, to the anticipation of something new. This is why starting always feels good. The beginning of anything is a neurological event. Your brain is genuinely lit up. And then, as the new thing becomes familiar, the chemical reward diminishes. The feeling changes, and the mind begins scanning for the next hit. The modern world did not invent this mechanism, but it perfected the conditions for it to destroy you. Because right now, in this moment, you have access to thousands of new beginnings. A new course costs $29 and can be started in 30 seconds. A new project requires nothing more than a new document. A new idea can be pursued before the current one is finished. The access to starting is infinite, and more importantly, and this is the part that nobody says plainly, abandoning something costs you almost nothing. Think about what it actually costs you to quit. Financially, almost zero. Socially, nothing, nobody knows. Professionally, in most cases, nobody finds out. The sunk cost is real, but invisible. And so the mind does what minds do when there is no consequence. It takes the path of least resistance. It goes looking for the next beginning. The guitar sits in the corner. The course stays at 47% complete, and you tell yourself you'll come back to it. You're not broken. You're unstructured, and that's a different problem entirely. Plutarch, in his Life of Lycurgus, describes the agoge, the Spartan educational system, in terms that should be understood not merely as historical curiosity, but as an experiment in human architecture. What Lycurgus built was not a school. It was a structure designed around a single insight, that the human will, left to choose freely every day, whether to continue or to stop, will eventually choose to stop. So he eliminated the choice. Every Spartan male born of free citizens entered the agoge at the age of 7. This was not optional. There was no application process, no trial period, no version of the system that allowed you to leave when it became uncomfortable and return when you felt ready. The structure was total. You entered and you progressed through it. Not because you wanted to on any given day, but because the alternative was the loss of something you could not recover: your status as a Spartan citizen, the most valued thing a Spartan could possess. Xenophon, in the Constitution of the Lacedaemonians, reinforces what made this system functionally different from any modern approach to self-improvement. It was not designed to make you want to continue. It was designed to make stopping unthinkable. The cost of abandonment was built into the architecture of the society itself, not deposited into the private conscience of the individual. There was no moment in the Agoge where a young Spartan woke up and decided whether he felt like training that day. The decision had already been made, not by him, but by the system he was embedded in. His role was to show up. The structure would do the rest. This extended to the syssitia, the communal meals that Spartan men were required to attend throughout their adult lives. Even the wealthiest citizen, even the king, was not exempt. Absence required justification. Repeated absence had consequences. The daily rhythm of the Spartan was not a personal choice renewed every morning. It was a social contract with teeth. Historians note, and this is worth acknowledging, that much of what we know about the Agoge comes from sources written after the classical period, and some aspects were likely idealized or reconstructed. But the compulsory, total, continuous nature of the system is broadly accepted. Sparta produced men who finished things, not because they were born with extraordinary willpower, but because they were placed inside a structure that made finishing the default and abandoning the exception. That is not a motivational lesson. It is an engineering lesson. Subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. Now, let's get back to what matters. In 2017, the behavioral economist Richard Thaler received the Nobel Prize in Economics. One of the central concepts behind his work is what he and colleagues called commitment devices, mechanisms that people use to lock themselves into a future behavior by making deviation costly. The most cited example is Ulysses and the Sirens. Knowing he would not be able to resist their song, he had himself tied to the mast of the ship. He didn't try to strengthen his willpower. He didn't meditate. He didn't visualize resisting. He engineered the situation so that resistance was structurally inevitable. He made the undesired choice impossible. Thaler and his colleague Shlomo Benartzi applied this logic to retirement savings and showed that when people were automatically enrolled into savings plans without having to actively choose to participate, participation rates jumped dramatically. The same people, the same preferences, the same income, completely different outcomes, simply because the architecture of the decision had changed. This is what Sparta understood intuitively and what behavioral science is only now formalizing. Willpower is a depleting resource. It is not a reliable foundation for anything that requires sustained effort over time. What produces completion is not more willpower, it is less need for it, a structure that removes the daily decision of whether to continue. The novelty bias, the brain's tendency to reward new stimuli with greater dopamine release than familiar ones, is not a character flaw. It is a feature of the nervous system that served early humans extraordinarily well. The problem is not that your brain finds beginnings more exciting than middles. The problem is that you have built nothing that makes the middle structurally unavoidable. Look at the people in your life who consistently finish things. Not always the most talented, not always the most motivated. But observe, they tend to have systems with embedded accountability. A coach who expects them on Thursday, a partner who notices when they disappear, a payment structure that doesn't refund, a public commitment that has a social cost if abandoned. They have, intentionally or not, engineered their environment so that stopping requires more effort than continuing. This is not willpower, it is architecture. The Spartan who trained every day was not more disciplined in some innate spiritual sense. He was a human being inside a system that had removed the cost-free exit. The guitar in your corner has a cost-free exit. The online course has a cost-free exit. Your gym membership, even the one you're still paying for, has a cost-free exit, because the only price you pay for not going is invisible and private. When you understand this, the question changes. It stops being, "Why don't I have more willpower?" And it becomes, "What would I have to change about my environment to make abandoning this harder than continuing?" That is the question Lycurgus answered for an entire civilization. It's the question you have to answer for yourself. Sparta fell. Historians generally point to multiple causes: geopolitical, economic, demographic. But Plutarch himself observed that the decline accelerated when the Spartan system began to loosen. When wealth entered the city and created alternatives. When the structure softened. When, for the first time, it became possible to opt out. Not officially, but practically. The system didn't fail because the Spartans lost their character. The character was the system. When the system changed, what it produced changed with it. This matters because it removes the comfortable story we tell ourselves about people who finish things. That they are simply built differently. That they have a quality you lack. The evidence suggests otherwise. What they have, or have built, or stumbled into, is a structure that makes following through easier than stopping. They have, in one form or another, tied themselves to the mast. The course you abandoned didn't fail because you're not smart enough for it. It failed because signing up costs the same whether you finish or not. The guitar in the corner isn't gathering dust because you're not musical. It's gathering dust because putting it down has no cost that you can feel. This is an uncomfortable realization, not because it condemns you, but because it removes one of the most comforting excuses available, that you simply don't have what it takes. You probably do. The question is whether you've built an environment that demands it from you. Commitment devices are not complicated. They are also not comfortable. Telling someone you trust what you're building and when you'll have it done. Paying for coaching that doesn't refund for cancellations. Joining a group where your absence is noticed. Removing the frictionless exit from the things that matter. None of this is Sparta. You're not going to be conscripted into your own goals. But you can make the decision once, structurally, architecturally, instead of remaking it every single day when you're tired and the novelty is gone and the next beginning is already calling. The guitar will keep waiting. The question is whether you're going to keep letting it. If something in this video named something you've been carrying without language for it, there's more here. Subscribe if you want to keep going. The world doesn't need more people who start things. It needs people who build structures that make stopping harder than finishing. If you were expecting a magic trick during this video, I'm sorry, but I can't conscript you into a system like Sparta's. However, you already know the way. You need to build a reason to continue that doesn't offer you an easy way out. If you need to lose weight, and you've already suffered from being overweight or dealing with health issues, are you sure you still need a reason not to give up? Wouldn't that course you bought generate extra income and help you chase your dreams? Are you absolutely sure you still need more reasons? Stop looking for reasons to do what simply has to be done. Be different. Be strong. Subscribe to the Path of Sparta channel and leave a comment to support our community.